A reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah. Rise up in splendor, Jerusalem. Your light has come. The glory of the Lord shines upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick clouds cover the peoples. But upon you the Lord shines, and over you appears his glory. Nations shall walk by your light, and kings by your shining radiance. Raise your eyes and look about. They all gather and come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters in the arms of their nurses. Then you shall be radiant at what you see. Your heart shall throb and overflow. For the riches of the sea shall be emptied out before you. The wealth of nations shall be brought to you. Caravans of camels shall fill you, dromedaries from Midian and Ephah. All from Sheba shall come, bearing gold and frankincense, and proclaiming the praises of the Lord. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Ephesians. Brothers and sisters, you have heard of the stewardship of God's grace that was given to me for your benefit, namely, that the mystery was made known to me by revelation. It was not made known to people in other generations, as it has now been revealed to his holy apostles and prophets by the Spirit, that the Gentiles are co-heirs, members of the same body, and co-partners in the promise in Christ Jesus through the gospel. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word so that I too may go and do him homage." After their audience with the king, they set out. And behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and on entering the house they saw the child with Mary his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage, and then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, good morning. As we celebrate the feast of the Epiphany, right, the wise men, the three kings coming and finding the Lord Jesus, I was thinking about the nativity scene, which I assume you've noticed before and have seen. And if you haven't seen one, we've got a big one right out there. So take a look afterwards. And you know, a lot of us have seen it, and we've seen it so often that I think we forget to really look at it. It's so commonplace, and the story is so familiar to us that we just kind of gloss over it like we would any other kind of normal decoration. But if you ever stop and just really look at and really consider what's happening in the nativity scene, it's actually very, very funny, because there's a lot of weird things happening in that scene, right? First of all, God is the smallest thing, right? And that's a very odd way to depict God, right? And he's the smallest thing, and he's in the hay there, and there are two very, very unimportant people right next to God, right? Mary and Joseph, right? These are not like high society people, right? These are just common, like, paupers almost, and they're right next to God. And there's animals where God is, and hay and stuff, and these poor shepherds who just kind of show up from the field, and then all of a sudden you get these three kings, right? And they've got gold and frankincense and myrrh, which are very impractical gifts, right? And so you got this juxtaposition of like intense poverty and intense wealth all meeting in a barn, right? And there's like angels outside, and you've got not only this poverty and wealth, but you've got God and like divinity and humanity. It's all just kind of smashed all together into this one scene. And it's very funny. It's very strange when you actually just stop and look at and consider all of the different things that are actually happening there in the manger scene. And so I encourage you that even if you've seen one, to stop and take a look, to really consider what's actually happening there. And what we're celebrating today, right, is the arrival of the Magi, the three kings. Again, with their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, you'd think one of their wives would have encouraged them to bring a casserole or something. That would have been a lot better. No, as they come to bring their gifts to the newborn king, right? They've actually brought gifts that are fit for a king, right? There's a reason. There's a certain sense, you might say, of impracticality, right? It's because kings are used to having the most precious things brought to them. And so as one king comes to another, right, he brings this gift of pure preciousness. Right? And so these gold, this frankincense, this myrrh, right, these are gifts that are fit for a king. And what's really fascinating about this moment, right, as the three kings arrive on the scene, they seem so unfazed. Right? You'd think that a king, right, who's used to being a king and used to sitting, probably on a throne, might be a little put off by going into a barn, right? It might be a little bit puzzled as to why the king is in a manger, right? That might be somewhat troubling to them, but they don't seem troubled. They don't seem fazed. They don't seem put off. Instead, they just come down and they offer him their gifts, these gifts that they know are fit for the king. And it's because the heavens themselves, the one that they've been following, is the star. Right? The heavens themselves has been dictating to them, here's the king. Here's where the king actually comes. And they don't seem to mind the circumstances. They don't seem to mind the situation in which they find themselves, because they understand that this must be him, because this is the one that, again, the cosmos have rearranged themselves in order for them to find this particular king. And once again, you start to consider, isn't it somewhat strange that kings, earthly kings, would come and offer homage to another king? Right? That's not how kingdoms usually work. Kingdoms are usually fighting with each other, trying to take one another's kingdoms over so that my own kingdom can advance, because that kingdom is a rival. And yet here they're not doing that. Because, again, as the heavens dictate where this king is, I think the heavens, they start to understand that the heavens are also dictating who this king actually is. Remember, it's God himself That's the smallest part of that entire scene. And this is a king unlike any other king. This is a king that has no equal. This is a king that has no rival. And so they're not put off by their situation. They're not put off by the fact that he's laying in the manger in this kind of smelly old barn, right? And they come to do him homage and to bring him their gifts and to lay their gifts at the feet of the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the God of gods. And so as we consider that scene, what's, I think, amazing is that at every nativity scene that exists, you may not have known this, but you are actually part of that scene. All of them. Every single one that anybody has ever put up. You're in that scene because you're one of the kings. Right? The kings, as they come from the nations to worship the King of the Jews. And what we start to understand here at the very beginning of Jesus' life, literally, he has just been born. At the very beginning, what we start to understand is that his life is not just for the Jews, but is for all. And he is going to magnify this kingdom. He's going to expand his kingdom to include every single person. And it means that you actually get to come and bring him gifts. And it doesn't have to be gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Thank goodness, because I don't know where to get myrrh, right? But the gifts that we give are gifts that are still fit for a king, right? The gifts that we give are the gifts of our own lives, the gifts of our own hearts, the gifts of our very self. And we get to do that not just at Christmas and not just at Epiphany when we see the kings bringing their gifts. We get to do that every time we come here. It's very important that the water, the wine, and the bread start in the back. It'd be a lot more convenient if they were all up here already. But it's actually really important that they start there because those aren't my gifts, they're yours. And as they're brought forward, right, you actually get the chance. That's your moment. That's your moment to unite yourself, to say to the Lord, Lord, as we offer you this bread, this water, and this wine, I want to offer you myself as well. This is your chance to imitate the three kings. This is your chance to lay down your gifts at the feet of the king that you found. That's your moment. And so as we celebrate this Epiphany today, right, God is still the smallest thing in the room, which again is amazing. Right, the only thing I can think of that's perhaps more tiny and kind of helpless than a newborn baby is that small bit of bread. Like God still comes in these surprising ways. God still comes in these kind of funny ways, and he kind of smashes it all together. And it's not just at the nativity scene, it's at this altar. Here is where everything comes together. Here's where everything converges. All of the wealth and poverty, all of humanity and divinity, it all comes together right here. And we've got this moment. We've got this moment to lay down our gifts. We've got this moment to offer gifts fit for a king to the king, the one we've been looking for and the one that we've finally found right here. I encourage you not to just let the moment pass you by today, but as the gifts, especially as the gifts are brought forward, right, take that moment. Take that moment to offer your heart to the Lord. Take that moment to offer your gifts to the Lord. Understanding that that's what places you in the nativity scene. Because as the three kings once did 2,000 years ago, we get to do today.